Welcome to the Love Lab podcast, a safe place to get real about sex. Whether you're man, woman, single or couple, this is the show for you because, well, sex matters. We are your hosts, Kevin Anthony and Céline Remy.
Welcome back to the Love Lab podcast. This is episode 29, and it is titled, Does Size Matter and Other Penis-Related Things?
Well, that's pretty exciting.
You're getting excited about penis size, I see.
Well, after we did our previous episode of the other week on do men prefer tight vagina and other vagina-related things, I was like, yeah, I'm excited about doing the counterpart.
Well, it only seemed fitting that, pun totally intended, that we discuss this very important topic. Actually, when you start to research it and you start to read how people feel about it, and we're going to get into that, you realize this is something that a lot of people focus on. It's a huge question that people have.
Yeah, actually, we're going to give you numbers right now. As much as 45% of men believe they have a small penis. That's nearly half of the men that walks around thinking they are not, appropriate or...
So then the question becomes, is that real or is that a misconception? So then what is the average size of a penis?
Okay.
We know the answer to that, and we're going to give it to you.
Well, yeah. Well, not that we did our own studies, but we did Google it. And several people around the world decided to do this kind of fun study, measuring penis's size and stuff like this. And so numbers do vary a little bit from study to study. But what we found is that an average penis size is anywhere between 5 to 5.5 inches.
5 to 5.5. Now, what's so interesting about that is that most people, so they also did, they did surveys to ask people what they thought the average size was. And of course, if you compare that to what the average size actually is, in all the studies, people overestimated what they thought the average size was.
Yeah.
And, some overestimated more than others. But the point is there's this perception that most penises are really big. And I think that contributes a lot to these men, this large number of men who think that they have a small penis.
And then I really want to make a really important distinction here because a flaccid penis is very different from an erect penis. So when we're talking about the sizes here, we are talking about an erect penis. We're not talking about what it looks like when it's flaccid because you can be a shower and look really big flaccid and there's not a big difference. Or you could be a grower. And you can't judge a man by the size of his flaccid penis.
Right. So some penises, when they get hard, grow a lot. And some don't grow that much at all.
Absolutely.
So you might see a man with a really big flaccid penis, and then when he gets hard, it's actually not that much bigger. And vice versa, right? You might see a man with a really small flaccid penis, and when he grows, you're like, whoa, where did that come from?
So I've seen thousands of penises by now.
And I was going to ask you this. See, we quoted numbers about studies, but being that you've worked in this field for a long time, I would love to hear how your personal experience compares to what the numbers actually say.
Yeah, well, definitely. In terms of shower and grower, I want to start with that part. I have seen many men that will look maybe smaller because they're flaccid, and as soon as they erect, it triples or quadruples. That's absolutely normal. And I also have seen men that are pretty big, and then it kind of stays about the same. And just because you're big doesn't mean you're not going to grow more, or just because you're small, you're going to grow a lot. I'm just making generalization. But ultimately, in size, I think the 5 to 5.5 as an average is totally in the ballpark.
Okay. So, and to add to that, if you expand out a little bit below and a little bit above that average, when you go to anything between 4 inches and 6.3 inches, that covers 90% of all men.
Yeah.
90% are either between 4 or 6.3.
Wow.
That's that's a big percentage. Because what's so interesting to me about that is that it's again this perception that so many guys have that their penis is small. When you realize that 90% of men are either only maybe a little bit smaller than you or maybe a little bit bigger than you.
Yeah, it's not a big, giant difference.
It's not. But then if you look at porn movies, if you look at the average dildo size in a sex store,
Yes.
you see these gigantic things. Like,
Yes.
is it any wonder that most men feel they can't compare?
Yeah, and I really want to talk about that because when we did some, we actually went to the sex store not too long ago because I needed a new dildo for a course I was creating. And we're like looking around and it's incredible. Like the sizes of these things. I'm like, if I was a man, I would feel inappropriate. Like I would feel like something's wrong with me when I see the sizes of these toys and like looking at the thing between my legs, I'd be like, wow, it really doesn't compare. And that's kind of the first thought I had. And then I thought of it as a woman, just because I'm a woman. And I was looking at these giant things. And honestly, to me, it was not appealing. I was just like, it's more scary than anything else. Plus, toys do not convey energy. Like it's not the same as like a real penis. So to me, I'm like, it's just a thing. It's not a human being. And so I'm like, why would I use a giant thing that just like fills me up but too much?
Okay, so now that we understand what a normal penis is, at least from a size perspective, let's talk about what it is women actually want.
Yes. So I found this really interesting number here that 85% of women may be satisfied with the size and proportion of their partner's penis. 85% of the women just are very happy with what you've got. Well, it's men that are less sure of themselves.
Yeah, so that's really important to know. If you're a guy and you're thinking that maybe you're not big enough, realize that 85% of women are actually satisfied with the size of their man. So if you're anywhere near that average, basically don't worry about it, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's another study that you found, which is really, really interesting. I'll let you talk about the study, but this one comes from the journal PLOS1, which is a fairly well-known and respected journal.
And so what they did was fascinating because they took what they say this novel approach of asking women, tell us what your size preferences are. And what they did, they used 3D printed models of 33 different dimensions of penises.
So this is cool, right? Because they're not asking women to tell us in numbers. They're not saying, well, what gee, like a 5 or a 6, right? Because in that case, most people are going to have a sort of distorted view of what size really is. So it's not very accurate. So here they took 33 different dildos basically and said, okay, pick the one that you would want. Yeah. And they found an interesting difference.
Well, and the other thing too they did is that they made these penises blue so that it wouldn't be attached to any color and sizes because, hey, we've all heard of different ideas that black is bigger than better or like yellow is smaller, and that's not always true.
Exactly.
And so they didn't want any of these ideas and misconceptions to play a role in this, and so they made them blue.
Well, I think they offended a few of
aliens.
What are the people from the Avatar movie?
I don't remember.
Nairobi, whatever they are, they may have been offended. But other than that,
so what they found was that for long-term partner. They went for a penis of slightly shorter circumference and length compared with the choices for a one-night stand. And so they were choosing an average length of 6.3 inches and a girth of 4.8 inches. And that's fascinating because they're like, okay, so what that means is if you're just gonna have a one-night stand scoring the night, it might matter that you're a little bit bigger. The woman might like it better just because it's a one one-time thing. But for like the everyday ride, they go for the smaller model.
So here's why I think that is. I think that's probably because a lot of women fantasize what it would be like to have a really big penis because they've probably never had one, because 90% of men in existence do not have a penis that big.
Yeah.
So it's probably like for a one night stand, they're probably thinking, well, yeah,
Might as
fuck
well
it.
go there.
Yeah, let's try a big one and see what it's like. But when it comes to long term, most of them prefer a smaller one. Now, I think that's a fascinating difference. And what I also think is quite funny is I've had a few guy friends over the years that had sort of abnormally large penises. And you always know when you have a friend as a guy, especially when you're younger, if you have a friend who's a guy who has an abnormally large penis, everybody knows about it. And this is not like because, any of them are gay or like, we're seeing each other. No, guys who have really big penises like everybody in the world to know they have a big penis, right? So I had a friend in college who had an abnormally large penis and he was whipping it out all the time. I had another friend later on after college, was in I want to say late 20s or so. And there were three of us guys that used to go out a lot, and like we'd be at a bar and all of a sudden I'd turn around and he also had a piercing on his penis. And like next thing you know, he's got his penis whipped out in the middle of the bar showing some woman how giant and his piercing, like so.
Are you kidding?
Oh, not at all. This really happened.
Oh God, that's a bad move. By the way, if you're thinking you should try that, do not. Women are not turned on by that.
Totally.
Douchebag move.
But here's the point. Oh, and then I had another friend many years later who also had a really large penis. And it's funny because I hooked him up with a good friend of mine, a woman who was a good friend of mine. And she was like wanting
A bigger cock?
not so much a bigger cock. She was actually just wanting somebody to have sex with, honestly. And I knew this guy, and he was kind of a ladies' man, and the women loved him. And I was like, look, if you're just looking to like have some sex, and sort of get that need met, I'm like, I should just hook you up with my friend. So I did. But anyway, all of these guys had abnormally large penises. And all of the women that we were both friends with, I would have conversations with the women about what they thought about it. So first, number one guy from college, right? So he had an abnormally large penis, and one of our good friends, who eventually ended up being with him, the first time she saw it, her immediate thought was, there is no way that thing is coming near me. That's what she said. She was like, no fucking way. So that was and so we had talked to a lot of our female friends, and again, because this guy had shown his penis so many times in parties and things like that, the majority of our women friends said that they actually were intimidated or scared by it and didn't even know what to do with it. Not the second guy, because I didn't really talk to too many women who he showed his penis to. But the third one, who was a good friend of mine who happened to have sex with a lot of women, I would talk to a lot of them too about it. And even my friend, the first time she saw the size of his penis, she actually said to him, there's no way you're putting that thing inside me. She did eventually end up having sex with him, and she said in the beginning it was kind of difficult until she learned how to deal with the size of it. But and this is not to slam guys who have big penises. Like, guys, if you're out there and you have a big penis, awesome. Own it,
Some
love it.
Some women love it.
Yeah, some women
just find the one
who loves it. I was just sharing those stories to say that for the guys that don't have really big penises,
the 90% of the population,
the 90% of the population, like, don't worry about it. Most women, they may joke about it, they may laugh about it, about, oh yeah, big penises. But when it really comes down to it, every study and all of our personal experience shows that it's really not about size. Like, as long as you're somewhere in that mid-range, it's all good.
Well, in my personal experience, I've had different experiences. I had really short, so I had below average, and I had above average as well. And both ways, I was like, oh, okay, that's smaller than I thought. And unfortunately, that guy was a virgin, so he did not know how to really use it well. And I think that made a difference. So I don't think it was just the size, but it was his ability to use it. And we'll talk more about that later in the show. The one who had a really big penis, I was like, oh shit, like, wow, okay, what do I do with that? And so I was more like the other women that were like, wow, I don't know if you can even put that inside me. The cool thing is that he was able to, and actually it was very enjoyable. But again, it took some practice to figure out the best way of using it. And so ultimately, I think that, and we'll go more in details with that. It really depends on your own shape as a woman and what you like. And just like it is, like some men will like big boobs, some men will like smaller boobs. And like, it's just like there's things for everybody.
There is. And I'm glad that you just brought that point up. Not so much that there's something for everybody, because that's true. But penis size is actually really only important when it comes to how it relates to the size of the vagina it's going to go in. Mm-hmm. Right? So this is a fascinating part.
So we were curious. We're like, okay, so we know that the average penis erect is about 5 inches, 5.5 inches. And we're like, okay, how does that compare to the depth of the vagina, like the vaginal canal? Because then that's like, these are important numbers to know. And one of the things that we found in some of the studies they had is that the average erect penis is about 33% longer than the average vagina. Let me repeat this, because it's actually mind-blowing when you think of it. The average erect penis is about 33% longer than the average vagina. Holy moly! Wow, that means that you're big enough. And so the depth and appearance of vaginas vary greatly, okay, between individuals, just like the length of penises. And usually the depth of the vagina is between 3 to 7 inches.
Right. 3 to 7 inches. So that's not an average. That's the range in which they vary,
yes.
Right? So it's important to know, because if you say that's an average, that means some of them are deeper than 7 and some of them are shorter than 3, which is not the case. This is
the depth of it.
Yeah, this is in general.
Yes.
Vaginas vary between being 3 inches and 7 inches deep. That means if you are, let's say you're at the higher end of the average, which is still like, what did we say, 6 something or other? Well, the average is 5 to 5.5. And then the women were picking 6. So even if you're in that higher, that means you're basically going to be able to fill any vagina. Mm-hmm. Any vagina.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So it's really cool. And, let's say even that you're below that average. So does that mean that no woman's ever going to feel satisfied?
No, because some women have a shorter vaginal canal.
Find a woman with a 3-inch depth.
Exactly. Well,
She's
be like, wow, you're so
it.
big, you fill me perfectly and you don't hurt me.
Exactly.
Because that also, it doesn't feel good. Like if it's too big and it doesn't fit well, there's pain involved and nobody wants that. So, so the question was, does size matter? And it's not really so much as a yes or no answer. So, yes, it does, and no, it doesn't. And that's why we took so long to answer that. But we wanted to talk about what's really most important. Now that we know the variation when it comes to sizes and personal preference, what truly matters? Is it the size? Or is it something else?
Ooh. Well, it's actually something else. Mm-hmm. It's actually several something else's.
Yes. So I truly believe from a woman's perspective that it's not so much the size of your cock, it's how you use it. And it's a really difficult one to explain. But, okay. Let's say we all have hands, right? And we can all give massages. And so you like sitting in a circle and having a friend giving you a massage. Have you ever noticed somebody that's like, yeah, I'm just taking my hands and I'm just like making these little moves, like not paying attention to what I'm doing and rubbing you like quickly. And I'm not saying that you actually like tensing or flinching and you're not liking this. That's somebody who doesn't know how to use their hands. And then there's somebody who's got hands and they're like going slower. And then they're like, oh, the person is twitching here. Oh, let me just hold this and put pressure there. Oh, now I see the pressure moving there. And is adjusting and listening to the feedback of the body. These are great hands.
There's so many different examples we could use of people. So like, here's another example, maybe not as sensual as the one you just gave, but But pretty much, especially in this country, everybody, once they reach a certain age, learns how to drive a car. Some people are really good at it, and most people really are not. But they all have the same skill. They're all doing the same thing, but some people do it really well and some people don't. It's like that classic joke of, what do you call the person who graduated last in medical school?
You still call that person a doctor.
Doctor.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They had the least amount of skill of anybody, but they're still a doctor, right? So point being is that it's really the skill that you learn, that you develop, and how you use the tool.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, pun intended.
And that makes a tremendous difference. And how do you learn how to use it? It's called practice.
It's called practice. It's called listening to this show. It's called enrolling in power and mastery programs.
Yeah, especially sexual mastery. I mean, all of these things will give you tools. Go to workshops, listen to feedbacks, and keep keep seeking improvements. There's never a place in our sexuality where we reach like, that's it, I'm a master. And it's like, yeah, you may have mastered part of the craft, but there's not, at least as far as I know, I have not yet reached a place where I'm like, this is it. I always find a new level.
The thing is, yes, you can reach master level, but there's always new levels of mastery, right? So it's like, just to use martial arts as an example, because I have a strong background in that, it's like everybody thinks that when you reach black belt level, you're a master. Actually, in most traditional martial arts, black belt level is just the beginning. It's that everything else is preparatory training. And once you hit your first degree black belt, it's like, oh, okay, now the real training starts, right? So there's all these levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there really is no end to the level. It's just that it takes longer and longer to move up each level, and by the time somebody gets usually around to 5th or 6th degree black belt, they're so old that they generally die or don't go much further than that. Maybe somebody makes it to 8, but...
So another thing that I think is really important to understand is not just the size, but it's about the shape of the penis. And the shape of the penis will make a really big difference. And it kind of ties into with our second point in terms of positions you choose. And the size of your penis, you can point up, you can point right, you can point left, and that will really create different sensations inside of women. And the men that have a lucky penis that points up sometimes have an advantage, because often that's where most of the very sensitive zone inside the woman's vagina, where some of the erectile tissues are, and the urethral sponge, so that it kind of like stimulates...
The famous G-spot.
Exactly, which is not a spot, but an area, which we covered in another episode. So sometimes it does make it more pleasurable for the woman, because it like reaches those areas if you point up. But everybody is a little bit different, and some women might have like a really sweet spot on the left. So if your penis curves in that direction, that's exactly what she wants and needs.
Well, and the other thing to know, and this comes back to the positions, is that if you're not one of those lucky few men who has a penis that points up, you can just change the position to change the angle.
Exactly. And so the angle and the positions matter even more than the size.
Yeah, and so let's talk about, we just talked about shape and angle and how positions can change that. But positions can really change the length.
Yes.
Right? Because some positions you can insert deeper than others. So let's say you have a really long penis and it's like you have a woman with a short vagina. Some positions are going to be uncomfortable for her. So you might want to switch to a position where the penetration is a bit more shallow.
Like things like a side, when you're on your side and you're doing like a doggy style from laying on the side, will give the man with the longer penis an impression of being like wrapped in and like going deep, but it's not going to go too deep for her. So that's one of those positions I used. I had a lover with a bigger size penis, and when he kind of wanted to pound and stuff, but I was like, hey, I don't want to be hurt, that's the position I would go into so that he could go at it and I would be comfortable and relaxed into that.
Yeah, and if you have a shorter penis, maybe missionary with the legs up more towards the head, that's going to enable you to get a lot deeper.
Yes.
So you can vary the position to compensate for being a little bigger or a little smaller or whatever.
Another really important point here, and it's a really long subject that we're gonna just barely like touch the surface on it.
During the woo-woo zone.
Exactly, be warned. But it's all about the energy you project from your penis. And there's a concept that if you imagine that your penis is a wand of light, and through your penis you can transmit information, you can bring forth healing to her, you can move like energy through that penis. It changes how you make love. And I taught that concept to a client of mine, and he worked with me separately. He worked with me with his wife, and then he came back by himself. And when he used that concept of the wand of light without telling his wife about it, she said, "You did something different in our lovemaking." She said, "I felt more connected, it was deeper, more profound." Because he didn't so much focus on a technique, on the size or anything else. He just focused on like breathing through his penis, with his penis, imagining this light. Like it really spoke to him, the wand of light image. And he approached it from that perspective of filling her up fully with his light and through his wand. That changed everything.
And women will actually say, if a man does a really good job of really projecting the energy, a woman will say that, wow, you felt huge.
Yes.
Like you felt gigantic.
Yeah, you filled me fully.
Yeah.
Yes. So
And the size hasn't changed.
no, but it's your intention, it's how you used it, again, like back to that. And so know this, that you could literally like increase how you feel by your presence, and you're directing the energy into your cock. Yeah, isn't that cool? I want to bring another point that's really important, last but not least. It's hygiene. You know, we women are sensitive, and honestly, like, and we've covered that in some other episodes, but it's so important. I felt we needed to say it again. Please, like, wash your cock, like, pull the skins if you're not circumcised, and even if you are, like, make sure you like go around the folds, and it's okay, like, please use some soap, and like trim the hair a little bit so that it doesn't get like too smelly, because that makes a huge difference in us wanting it.
I almost can't believe that in 2019, we still have to have the conversation about cleanliness in the genital region. But this is absolutely a thing. And, you know, clients will say, I don't understand why women don't really want to have sex with me. And then when you start getting into the physical body-based work, you're just like, whoa, okay.
Change your diet, use a better soap.
It's like, you know, you got to make whatever environment, you know, you want people to come into. It's like, you know, if you have a brick and mortar store and you want people to come into your store, you've got to make it an inviting place to be. You know, if it's like filthy and a mess with stacks of junk all over the place and it kind of smells moldy and icky in there, like, who the fuck wants to come into your store, right? You know, it's kind of the same thing. If you want women to want your penis, if you want them to crave it, if you want them to drool when they see it, it's got to look good, it's got to smell good, it's got to taste good, right? It's all got to be there.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm still laughing from your store joke. Oh, well, I agree. I mean, bottom line is yes, I agree. So now, what can you do if you're one of those guys who actually has a size that's smaller or bigger? Because there's a 10% of the population that's not average, which means some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. And so we're just going to address like quickly something. If you're smaller, things that obviously you need to get really good at the energy thing. You need to be really good at kissing, at using your tongue and your fingers, but also just really filling up your cock. Sometimes if you're smaller, you're like, well, that's all I've got. But like, fill it up. Like,
well,
really
own it, right?
Own
So
it.
the problem with guys that have small penises is a lot of times they lack confidence
Yes.
because of it, right? So they go into all these encounters with women already not feeling like a powerful man.
Absolutely.
So just fucking own it. Like,
Yes.
step into your power and be like, I don't care what size it is. Like, I'm going to use this fucking thing.
You could use an extender sleeve. So there's stories that exist that you put over your penis that will extend your penis by a few inches. And again, like it's probably not something you do on a one night stand, but with a long-term partner, and you can explore that and playing with toys. That can really be a good opportunity there.
Yeah, and make sure that you make use of positions that accentuate whatever size you do have.
Exactly. So, or use that donut if you like really, really big.
Well, right. So on the other end of the spectrum is guys that happen to be really, really big. Again, utilize positions that are more comfortable for the woman so you're not bumping up and smashing her cervix constantly. There's also donuts, right, which can kind of shorten the penis, a little donut that goes around that takes up some space, makes it a little shorter so you don't go in as deep.
Yeah. And then last, but absolutely most important, make sure she's fully engorged and that you work on her first, because the more engorged she will be, the more circulation, the more blood flow, the more she will feel.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And also, two things happen when we get engorged. We expand. Think of the vagina like a balloon. At the same time, it expands, but it still is snug. And so it works with both sizes. And so working with her is actually becoming more important than worrying about your penis size.
Yeah, and remember from our last episode, right, about whether or not men prefer tight vaginas. The vagina can expand and contract to any size.
Yes, and a bit about the tone, about using the muscles, and all of that. But focusing on her will make a big difference about her satisfaction.
Well, there you have it, men. This is everything you need to know. No matter what your penis size is, there is a strategy, there is something that you can do to maximize your woman's pleasure.
And if you're listening, I'm so curious, how many times did we say the word penis in this entire episode? I don't know. If you're counting and want to tell us, let us know. Maybe like if you get the right number, will you win a prize?
I wonder if we set a new record. All right, we will see you next time on the Love Lab podcast. We hope you liked this episode of the Love Lab podcast. If you enjoyed this show, leave a comment and share it with your friends.
And if you want more, we have an entire digital library with the best sex tips and relationship advice at CelineRemy.com. That's CelineRemy.com. So join us in the Sex Vault to continue this adventure.
Thanks for listening.
And remember, you're amazing.